So now I'm going to begin with the front end. So the front end, I'm going to go ahead and take it apart. Now, if you needed to replace the body mounting system, it's just these 4 screws right here. I will not be removing them. So you just remove these and then this just pops out. If you need to adjust the post, you have a screw here and a screw there. You just remove this screw, move this up or down, and then just put the screw back in. For now, I'm going to go ahead and remove the links. So the links, I'm really going to be working with 1/2. So the link over here, you're going to need a 2mm driver for this screw, and then you will need a 5.5mm for the nylon nut that is in the back. And you always want to turn on the nut, really, not the screw. Then again, it depends. Sometimes screws actually thread in. That's the reason why. Sometimes they do not. In this case, it does not matter. Here we go. All right. So that releases the link, and all of the links are similar. So this one up here, this is the same link. It's just going to be the nut, the screw. And then this link down here is just 1 screw, and it's a 2mm driver. You just bring that out. So I'm not going to be removing that. At this point, I want to free up the shock tower. In order to free up the shock tower, I have these 4 screws right here. Now, this appears to have acquired quite a bit of damage. I actually cannot access these screws on top. It appears that somebody put some putty on there. So I will not be removing those. All right, well, let me just show you. You remove this screw, this screw, this screw, and that screw, these 4 screws, and then the shock tower would just come up, and that would be it. There appears to be some epoxy on here gluing this together, which is worrisome because it appears that some of it is on the case. So I'm going to try to see if I can open it. In order to open the case, I'm going to remove these 2, and then these 2 screws right over here. The breakdown is very similar to the rear end, so if you've watched the rear end, it's going to be the same process to access the differential. If you have not watched the video of the rear end teardown, then I recommend that you watch it. Let's see, here we go. Now, something that Losi does with their blocks, their A, B, C, and D is, if you remember the D block, it's a metal block, but then it just has a plastic cover, and the plastic cover is what holds the pins in. And that is what you're going to find every time. So this is just a little plastic cover. Then you're going to have your block. Keep in mind the orientation, these point down. And then this is just covered, and that is it. So at this point, let me go ahead and remove this screw. That way I can go ahead and remove this side of the suspension, which is the side that I'm going to be working on for the purpose of the teardown videos. These screws are going to be the ones that remove the shocks. Now you can remove the shocks without disassembling everything else. Here we go. And now I just need to remove the screw for the sway bar. Now there's a little bit of dirt there, so don't force your driver. You can damage the screws. Just grab a pick and pick out all of that grime. And then once I do this, the sway bar link will be loose, and then I'll be able to release the arms. All right. And there we go. That's the part I'm going to be working on, but for now, I want to go ahead and try to access the differential. Let's see if I can do that. I will be removing that link in a bit. Here we go. All right, so we take this top screw and this other top screw. Normally these would be the only screws you would need to remove, but here I have the impression that this was accidentally glued on. And, oh wait, we have 2 more screws. And we have a screw here and a screw there. So that's one of the differences between the front differential and the rear differential. The front differential has a little difference. Now here, this pin goes to that, so that means one of these wheels still has the hex on. That has the hex. And those are not the factory hexes, so somebody did some replacing of parts. Which is fine, it happens. You drive it, wheel flies out, takes the hex with it. You know, you break the wheel, hex gets stuck, I don't know. Parts will be replaced. It's part of hard bashing. That's something to keep in mind. There we go. And there are those 2 screws, so that would be, normally that would be it. And yes, the top is epoxied on, because that's everything. So, normally this would be released without these don't actually matter, this is just a little plastic plate, but there's some epoxy here, so I'm going to have to break it, so you're going to hear a breakage. It'll be easier if I just remove the other sway bar link, because I'm about to pull on that and I don't want to stress the sway bar. Now, you don't have to remove necessarily the links, you could remove the entire sway bar, that is an option. And in order to remove the entire sway bar, it's actually quite simple. You would just have to remove these 4 little small screws with the links and then everything comes out. Or you can just shift this up and then pull on this. So there's different ways that you can go about it. And the main thing is I don't want to bend the sway bar in a way it's not meant to bend. And here we go. There we go, perfect. All right, so there's some epoxy here, epoxy there, and that's what was binding it. Here we go. One of the nice things about these differential cases is the differential only fits one way, so there's no way you can accidentally reverse the differential, which is something that can happen accidentally. And then your tires would be going on opposite directions, so they would either be traveling toward each other or away from each other, at which point, either way, your vehicle is not going to move. Here we go, so I'm just trying to get the debris out. And notice the cut on the gears. I mean, this is such a strong design. It's a very powerful design, which is probably why they designed them this way. So when you're going forward, these differentials can actually handle a lot of torque, this design of gear. Reverse is a different story, but you're not supposed to go in reverse full speed, just like cars, regular personnel vehicles, you go slowly in reverse and then you go quickly forward. That's why the gears are cut that way versus a straight cut gear. The only downside to gears like this, well, other than them being a little more expensive, is they're noisier. So they are a little noisier, and this is lacking grease. It feels pretty dry. I'm gonna have to go through and lubricate this again. But at least the bearings feel fine on this one. All right, let's use that. And I'm gonna go ahead and open, this differential I will actually open. The rear one I did not, but this one I will. So we're gonna need a 1.5 millimeter driver, and that will get these 4 screws off. And then once we do that, we'll be able to open up the differential. Now I'm gonna try to open it carefully. These are probably going to be grease filled, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with grease, but fluid filled, that will allow for more tuning. On a differential like this, on this type of vehicle, you may want to consider, say, a 40,000 weight in the front differential. That is a pretty good weight. The center, maybe a 30, and then the rear, you can go something light, like a 15. That's a good starting point, and then you can go up or down on the differentials depending on the conditions. If you're bashing, that's probably a good base point. Now, if you start adding a bunch of power to it, you're going to want to have heavier oils in the front and the center. If not, you're going to end up cooking the center, especially the center. If you go 4S, like this one, you're going to destroy that center differential. You're going to melt the plastic and a bunch of other stuff. And then the front, you're also going to need heavier because that inside wheel, as the truck pivots and turns, so as it's rolling, it's going to come off the ground potentially, and then you're going to lose all your power there. And then you could cook your differential because of the speed difference. So here's the gear. I really like those gears. And then this will just pop open. So it's just like the center differential. It's really very similar. So this is grease filled. This is just like the center differential. So at this point you do have a gasket. You can clean everything out. And then after you clean everything out, just clean out the grease, just fill it with fluid. Use differential fluid. Now, in order to remove these, if you did not see the center differential, it's the exact same thing. You just pop this up, and you can do it by prying it. Sometimes if you flip it, do that. Or if you just grab pliers, these pliers are too small, but it'll work. You just do this. And then once you do that, you slide this pin out. And now there's going to be a little shim in there. So this is now free. I can now pull on this. So this can now be pulled, and you're going to find two things. One, there's an O-ring in there, and two, there's a shim. The shim, see, there's the shim and the O-ring. So the O-ring goes at the bottom, the shim goes on the outside. The shim is necessary to protect that O-ring from the pin, that pin that holds this thing in place. The only thing I did now is I just dabbed a little bit of grease on here. So that is very, very important. Now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this. If you need to pop the bearings out, this is the time to do it. Once you remove this, the bearing just pops out. But let's go ahead and put this together. I'm going to recommend that my friend does fluid. I just don't know if he wants fluid or what his plan is. So this differential is going to be opened again. But as you can see how the grease is really liquidy versus that. So this grease has been run. I mean, it's fine, it's going to lubricate, but this front one has been working hard. So you really want to clean everything out and replace it, but I'm gonna have to wait. So I'm actually going to be tearing this down a second time, just to make those changes. But like I said, I strongly recommend using differential fluid for something like this. Now, these here, those little cross pins, they are like Lincoln logs. I will take one of them apart, and then I'll leave the other one inside. Here comes the gasket. I should remove this. And that is actually a very nice thick gasket. So let me just show you how this one works. Okay, so you didn't see the other video. So you have your conical gears, which I'm going to try not to touch too much. But then you have these little squares. These little squares, those go into the little square grooves inside of the differential. And it's a reinforcement, and it creates more surface area so that this doesn't eventually start carving a hole inside and spinning a way it's not supposed to. Now there's also a shim in here, and this shim protects the case from the gear. So when the gear's spinning at high speeds, the shim takes some of that friction off. And this is it. So there is a cutout, I'm not sure if you're able to see it, right in there. So both of these, they just sit together like Lincoln logs. Oh my God, here we go. Oh look, there's Wally, found him. But those are just going to sit. They're going to go like this, and that's it. So if you just remove that, there's going to be another gear just like this one inside. It's the same exact construction. Just grab your pliers, pull it out. There's a little pin, slide it out, and then this will pop off. Remove the bearing, and then there's going to be a shim and an O-ring in there. If you have not serviced this in a long time, the O-rings tend to dry up and crack over time. So if you have, that's the other nice thing too about a fluid-filled differential. If those seals are bad, fluid will start leaking out. And I know a leaky differential doesn't sound like a good thing, but once your differential starts leaking out, you know there's an issue with that O-ring, and that fluid leaking out is probably keeping some of the dirt particles out of your differential as well. So it'll do two things: keep dirt out of your differential, and two, let you know that you need to service the differential so there isn't further damage. Let me go ahead and put this little gasket. This is actually pretty thick. This is a thick gasket. Here we go. So I need to line this up so the holes line up. Now, I'm not sure if that's from the factory, see those two holes, or if somebody already tried servicing this, but there's two holes in a spot where there shouldn't be holes. This could have happened in the factory. Let's see. All right. Then you line everything up. You're going to need to place this gear and then line up all the holes, 20 billion of them. You know what? I'm going to do it this way. Place the gasket on this side, put all the screws through, and then gasket will help me hold the screws on. Here we go. All right, perfect. And then we'll do that. All right, and this one down here. All right, now that I have the screws in there, I'm just gonna try to line them up. Again, man, this grease is so, this grease is cooked. But like I said, I don't know if my friend wants to go with diff. He didn't tell me anything, he just told me to check the parts. I'm checking the parts, I just need to wait on this. I don't mind taking it apart again. But like I said, recommend you do fluid. And that's a 1.5. So I'm just gonna get them all started. So far I've only succeeded in one. Oh, there's two. All right, now that there's two in, the other ones should be relatively easy. And now, if you actually had fluid, you would not want to lean this, or else all the fluid's going to come out, so you're going to want to keep this upright. And if it is fluid, make sure that you fill it, but you leave about 1 millimeter from the top that's not filled, so that the gear can take up that space, this top gear, once you set it in there. If you do not, you're going to have the problem, some of that fluid is going to start leaking out, and then it's not going to allow your gasket to seal properly. Now, it is possible for you to accidentally overfill it by just a small amount. What you're going to have to do is, if it's such a small amount that it's not, maybe it's not worth taking the differential out and having a bunch of air in there. When you tighten it up, you're going to see that it's going to start pushing that fluid out. Just let it push out, let it sit for a while, so you're just going to let it sit like this. Clean it, and then tighten a little more, so it's going to push that fluid little by little. Again, not the best idea, because then you can have fluid between the gasket and the surface that you want to seal, and you may not get a correct seal. It's also going to increase the width. I know some people, you know, that's kind of difficult to believe or hard to believe, but having fluid, even grease, between parts can increase the distance. So depending on what your tolerances are, It could be an issue. Could be an issue. That's on this differential, I'm not sure, but on something, for example, a two-wheel drive short course by Associated, it makes a big difference. That makes the difference between whether or not the screws on the differential rub on the transmission components or not, and you do not want them to rub. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's see. So almost finished with this. I think I'm out of the camera here, give me a moment. All right. So this is good. And, all right, spinning the gear. Here, let's see, there's something wrong. I'm not sure if it's the gasket, but this is not seating properly, so let me go ahead and remove this. Oh, I see. Wait, no, that's not it. Why is it? It's binding on something, but I can't see. Those are the screws. All right, so let's go ahead and turn the differential, unless I made a mistake. You see, that's, here, let me take this off. I'm wondering if the differential, if that little Lincoln log bit that I was referring to, I mean, it's the differential cross pins, but I'm gonna call them Lincoln logs. If I accidentally flipped it, so maybe it's not seating properly. So if you feel that something's binding, just stop and take it apart again. Double check. Just double check everything. It's better than damaging more parts. Let's see. All right. I think I know what happened. When I sat this, the gear fell off and then the pins were there. That's what happened. Now I can't find the holes. Let's try this again. All right, so this is what happened. That's why I wasn't seating. Now I have to line everything up again. Let's line up the gasket to the top portion first. Oh, come on. There we go. And remove the pin. Perfect. All right, that is there. That works flawlessly. And now I can go ahead and set this on top. Perfect. Well, I'm not going to chant victory yet, but I think that was it, and it was easier this time. Get that one started. Now we'll do this one, get this one started. And then we will do this one. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the differential, then put it back in the case. So I'll show you how to put it back in the case. And then on the next video, I will show you how to take apart this whole assembly here, and then how to build this back up. And that'll be it. I will probably work on one shock and then off camera, and then I'll work on the other one on camera just so you can see how to replace the oil for these shocks. And it's the same process for the front and rear. That's why I didn't do it for the front. I'm just going to do it for the rear. But here we go. Now, it's very important that you keep the bearings in good condition. So you want to try to avoid excess moisture or really diluted murky water, because some of those fine grains of silica or dirt will get inside of your bearing and they're going to act like sandpaper. They're probably worse than sandpaper. Well, I guess it depends on the type of sandpaper. But it'll destroy your bearings completely. So here is the differential. And I'm going to go ahead and install it. Now really quick on these gears, make sure that you dab them with grease. There isn't much grease on them at all, but they're in very good condition, so you probably don't need that much. That's good enough. And that's really it, and then this can just be dropped in and rotate. Alright, everything's coated evenly with grease now. Now I can go ahead and take the top cover and just put the sway bar in place right in here. Now I'm going to take the top screws. The top screws are the longer conical screws, countersunk screws, I apologize. Those will go there. And then in the bottom, you're going to use the button screws. So the 2 button screws that we removed, these will go here in the bottom. And you will need a 2mm driver. So I hope this was helpful. Hopefully this is not the case where you have a destroyed case, but if you do, just now you know how to replace it. And to be honest, I know gluing and epoxy seems easy. Just get new parts, if you can, of course. Let's see. So here are the button screws. Now I'm having a challenge with the top ones, so I may go ahead and ignore them for now and just do them off camera. Let's see. Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and do these off camera, but that is it for the differential. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and we'll see you soon.
What? Oh, my hair! My tongue! My rod!